You know, for most of my life, I thought signs from the universe were just little coincidences, cute stories people told themselves to feel better when life got hard. I'd smile politely when friends shared their experiences, but deep down, I figured they were just reading too much into random moments. I've always been a practical person, rooted in logic, science, things I could see and measure. Palm readings, horoscopes, ghost stories? Not for me. But something happened to me at 70 years old that shook that certainty in a way I never expected. It didn't happen during some dramatic life event. There was no storm, no crisis, just an ordinary afternoon, the kind you don't even remember a week later. Except I'll remember this one for the rest of my life. I was at home, sitting in my favorite chair with a cup of tea, the kind of quiet where you can hear the hum of the refrigerator in the other room. The light was soft, the air still. And then I heard it, the clear, gentle chime of a bell. Not from the TV, not from my phone, just one single, perfect note hanging in the air. I froze. I don't even own a bell. The sound didn't belong there, yet it felt familiar, like it had been waiting for me to notice. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Maybe it was from outside, maybe a neighbor. That's what I told myself too. But here's the thing, no one else heard it. And over the next few weeks, that wasn't the last strange thing to happen. Looking back, I can tell you this. I didn't go searching for signs. I wasn't trying to read meaning into everyday life. If anything, I was the last person who would. But this one afternoon, it cracked the door open. And once you notice something like that, you can't unnotice it. What if, just for a moment, you imagined that not everything has to be explained? What if some things are simply meant for you to feel, not analyze? That day was the beginning of a journey I never thought I'd take, and it all started with the sound of a bell, when there was no bell. Before I tell you what happened, I think it's important you understand where I was in life at the time, because it wasn't exactly a season of wonder and magic. I had just turned 70. I'd recently lost my husband after more than 4 decades together, and for the first time since I was 21, I was living completely alone. The house that used to be filled with the hum of conversation, clinking dishes, and the occasional argument over whose turn it was to take out the trash had gone silent. My days looked almost identical. I'd wake up around 6:30, make coffee, sit by the window, and watch the street outside slowly come to life. I'd run the same errands, see the same cashier at the grocery store, come home, make a simple meal, maybe watch TV, and then go to bed. Over and over, like a loop on repeat. There was comfort in the routine, I guess, but also an emptiness. I wasn't looking for new meaning. In fact, I wasn't looking for much of anything. If you had asked me back then what I was living for, I probably would have said, I'm just here. It felt a little like waiting, but I wasn't sure what I was waiting for. Maybe nothing at all. It's funny though, sometimes when we're in that state, when we've stopped searching, life has a way of slipping something unexpected right under our nose. I didn't see it coming, and I certainly wasn't asking for it. I remember one afternoon, I was sitting at the kitchen table paying bills, and I caught myself staring at the wall clock for no reason. The seconds ticked by, and I felt this strange ache in my chest, like I was both missing something and not sure what it was. Loneliness has a way of creeping in quietly, you know. It doesn't always knock at the door. Sometimes it just sits down beside you without asking. I know I'm not the only one who's felt that way. My friend Mark, who's 72 now, went through something similar. He never believed in signs either, not until the year his son passed away. One morning, not long after the funeral, he found a single bright yellow flower growing in the middle of his gravel driveway, right in the spot where his son used to park his car. There was no reason for it to be there. The ground was too rough, too dry, and yet there it was. He told me it stopped him in his tracks. "I can't explain it," he said, "but I know it was for me." At the time, I didn't realize my own moment was coming. I was still in that quiet, colorless chapter of life. But looking back, I think that stillness was exactly what made me notice the sound of the bell when it finally came. It was just another quiet afternoon. One of those days where the minutes seemed to slide by without much notice. I wasn't expecting anything unusual. I wasn't looking for anything either. I had just finished folding the laundry and decided to make myself a cup of tea. The steam curled up from the mug as I settled into my favorite chair by the window. It was the kind of stillness where you can hear your own breathing. And then, it happened. From the old radio on the counter, a song began to play. Not just any song, our song. The one my husband and I danced to at our wedding decades ago. I hadn't heard it in years. I froze, holding my teacup midair, my mind tumbling back through time. I could almost see us again. Me in that ivory dress, him smiling like the whole world was in that room. Now, you might think, that's just coincidence. Songs come on the radio all the time. And that's exactly what I told myself. But deep down, something made me pause. The timing felt too perfect. Just a few minutes earlier, I had been thinking about him, about how much I missed his laugh. And then, here it was, playing in the background, like an answer I didn't know I was asking for. I shook it off, tried to be logical, but my heart wouldn't let it go. It was like a small tap on the shoulder from someone I couldn't see. I know I'm not the only one who's had something like this happen. My friend Susan, who's 75 now, once told me about the day she saw a double rainbow. It was right on her wedding anniversary, 2 years after her husband passed. She was out in the yard, watering her roses, when the rain started to fall in the lightest mist. She looked up, and there it was, 2 brilliant arcs stretching across the sky. She swears she could feel his presence beside her, like he was saying, "I didn't forget." Moments like that, they don't come with explanations written in the sky. You can't measure them or prove them to anyone, but they have a way of stopping you in your tracks, making you feel, if only for a heartbeat, that the distance between here and somewhere else isn't as far as we think. At the time, I still told myself it was just chance, but I couldn't deny that something inside me shifted, even if only slightly. It was the first little crack in my wall of skepticism. And once that wall starts to crack, well, light has a way of finding its way in. After that first moment with the song, it was like the world around me had quietly shifted. Little things began to catch my attention, things I might have brushed off before. At first, I wondered if I was just being more aware, but then, the timing of it all felt too uncanny. For several mornings in a row, I'd glance at the clock without meaning to, and it would read 11:11. I've never been one for numerology, but after the 3rd or 4th time, I started to feel a little nudge inside, like someone was trying to get my attention. You can call it coincidence, but have you ever noticed how certain moments seem to line up just right, almost like they're winking at you? Then there was the perfume. One evening, I was in the living room reading when the scent of my husband's cologne drifted through the air. I froze. No one else had been in the house all day. I hadn't opened any bottles or drawers, and yet, there it was, warm, familiar, and gone just as quickly as it came. I sat there for a long while afterward, letting that comfort wash over me. The 3rd sign came in a way I never could have predicted. I was chatting with a woman I'd just met at a local cafe. Out of nowhere, she said a phrase that stopped me cold. It was something my husband used to say all the time, one of those little expressions unique to him, not something you'd hear every day. I laughed and told her about him, but inside, I felt this strange, quiet joy. It was like the universe had just whispered, "I'm still here." These moments always seemed to appear when I was feeling low or uncertain, almost as if they knew when I needed a reminder most. And that's what struck me. If they'd happened at random times, maybe I could have chalked it up to chance. But they came at the exact moments my heart felt heavy, and that's hard to ignore. I'm not the only one who's experienced this. My friend David, who's 68, once told me about the day he finally decided to clean out his old mailbox. He was ready to toss everything, years of unopened flyers and bills, when he spotted an envelope from an old college friend he hadn't heard from in decades. Inside was a handwritten letter filled with memories and encouragement. It had been postmarked exactly 1 year to the day after David's wife passed away. He swears it was like she had arranged for that letter to find him when he needed it most. Whether you see these as coincidences or messages, there's something powerful in the way they arrive, quietly, unexpectedly, and exactly when you need them. And once you start noticing them, it's hard not to wonder what else you might be missing. There's one moment that stands apart from all the others. A moment so clear, so impossible to ignore, that it broke whatever was left of my skepticism. It happened late one night. I'd gone to bed feeling especially heavy, missing my husband more than usual. I must have drifted into one of those deep, vivid dreams, because suddenly, there he was. Not as a memory, not as a blur, but as real as the day I last saw him. He smiled at me, that same warm, mischievous smile, and said just 3 words, "I'm still here." His voice was calm, steady, like he was telling me something he wanted me to remember. The next morning, I woke up with tears in my eyes. The dream felt so real that I just lay there for a while, holding on to it. I got up to make coffee, and that's when I noticed something strange. On the kitchen table sat the small silver watch he used to wear every day, a watch I hadn't seen in months. It had been tucked away in a box in the bedroom. And yet, there it was, sitting in the middle of the table, as if someone had placed it there for me to find. I can't explain how it got there. I live alone. I didn't move it. And the timing, the dream, followed by that watch, was too perfect to dismiss. I sat down and cried, but they weren't just tears of sadness. It was a strange mix of comfort, disbelief, and this deep sense of connection. I know how this sounds. If someone had told me this story a few years ago, I probably would have smiled politely and thought, well, that's a nice coincidence. But when it happens to you, when the person you loved most somehow finds a way to reach you, it changes something inside you. A friend of mine, Carol, had a similar moment. She was kneeling in prayer one morning, asking for a sign from her late father. Just as she whispered, "Please let me know you're okay," she heard the soft, familiar strum of a guitar, the same song he used to play for her when she was a child. No one else was in the house. Whether you call these moments miracles, messages, or simply mysteries, they have a way of leaving an imprint on your heart. For me, that night with the dream and the watch was the moment I stopped wondering if there was more to this life and started believing that love has ways of finding us we can't begin to explain. A friend of mine, Carol, had a similar moment. She was kneeling in prayer one morning, asking for a sign from her late father. Just as she whispered, "Please let me know you're okay," she heard the soft, familiar strum of a guitar, the same song he used to play for her when she was a child. No one else was in the house. Whether you call these moments miracles, messages, or simply mysteries, they have a way of leaving an imprint on your heart. For me, that night with the dream and the watch was the moment I stopped wondering if there was more to this life and started believing that love has ways of finding us we can't begin to explain.
You know, I've asked myself this question more times than I can count. Was that just a coincidence? Or was it a message? It's a question that sneaks into your mind when something strange, unexpected, or oddly perfect happens. Like you're thinking of someone you've lost, and suddenly a song you both loved starts playing on the radio. Or you're feeling especially low, and out of nowhere, a butterfly lands right in front of you, the same kind your spouse always pointed out on your walks. Some people will say it's just chance. Others will swear it's a sign, a little nudge from the person you miss, or maybe from the universe itself, telling you you're not alone. For me, I've learned that whether you call it spiritual or psychological, the effect it has on your heart is absolutely real. A sign, even if it's just in your head, can lift the weight off your chest for a while. It can make you feel like life isn't just a series of random days, but a story still being written, with your loved ones somehow still in it. I remember talking to my neighbor, Mrs. Ellen, a widow in her late 70s. She told me that after her husband passed, she kept seeing cardinals, bright red, beautiful birds, in her backyard. She'd never noticed them before, but suddenly they were everywhere. To her, that was her husband's way of checking in. Silly, she asked me once. Maybe, but every time I see one, I smile, and I feel like he's with me for just a moment. And here's the thing. Science actually has something to say about this. Our brains are wired to notice patterns, especially when we're looking for meaning. Psychologists call it apophenia, the tendency to see connections or significance in random events. So yes, maybe your mind is searching for comfort, and that's why you notice these signs more when you're grieving. But to me, that doesn't make them any less valuable. In fact, it makes them even more precious. Because whether it's the universe sending a message or your own heart finding a way to heal, the result is the same. You feel lighter, you feel connected, you take one more step forward. So when people ask me, do you believe in signs? I tell them, I believe in the impact they have. And maybe that's what matters most.
What about you? Have you ever had something happen that made you stop and wonder if it was just chance or something more? You know, if you're watching this and thinking, well, I've never seen a sign in my life, I used to say the same thing. But here's the truth. Sometimes signs aren't loud, they're whispers. And if we're rushing through life, head down, checking our phones every 5 minutes, we'll miss them. If you truly want to receive signs, here's where I'd start. First, open your heart and your eyes. Don't just look, see. When you go for your morning walk, notice the little things. The feather on the sidewalk, the song on the radio that comes on right when you're thinking of someone. My friend Bill, 73, told me he once thought of his late wife while sipping coffee, and the very next moment, her favorite song started playing in the cafe. He swears it felt like she was right there. Second, write it down. Keep a small notebook or use the Notes app on your phone. When something strange or beautifully coincidental happens, jot it down. Over time, you might start to see a pattern, and it's often those patterns that turn a random moment into something deeply personal. Third, and this one is important, don't dismiss your feelings. If something makes you pause, makes your heart skip, or gives you that warm, unexplainable comfort, don't brush it off as just your imagination. Maybe it is, but maybe it's also a moment you were meant to feel. And look, I'm not asking you to believe blindly. You don't have to turn every cloud shape into a message or see every flickering light as a miracle. That's not the point. The point is, when you stay open, life becomes richer, more connected. Think of signs as a gift for your spirit. Even if they're just coincidences, they can still bring you peace, joy, or hope. And isn't that worth holding on to?
You know, before I turned 70, I never really believed in signs. Sure, I'd hear other people talk about them, feathers on their doorstep, a song playing at the right moment, a butterfly landing on their hand, and I'd smile politely. But deep down, I thought, well, that's sweet, but it's probably just coincidence. Then something happened. It wasn't dramatic, no lightning from the sky, no booming voice from above, just a quiet, unexpected moment that stopped me in my tracks. And in that second, it felt like someone, or something, was reaching across time and space just to tap me on the shoulder and say, "I'm still here." I can't fully explain it, and maybe that's the point. It wasn't about proof or logic, it was about how it made me feel, connected, comforted, like the world had a little more magic than I'd been giving it credit for. You see, when we're younger, we're busy looking forward, toward the next job, the next home, the next chapter. But after a certain age, we start looking back. And in that looking back, we sometimes ache for the people and moments we've lost. Signs, well, maybe they're just small bridges between then and now. Little reminders that love doesn't end, it just changes shape. I think of my friend Carol, who lost her husband 5 years ago. She told me that every time she's feeling low, she finds a penny heads up right outside her door. She swears it's his way of saying, "I'm still looking out for you." Is it true? I don't know, but I do know that her face softens every time she talks about it, and there's a light in her eyes that wasn't there a moment before. Maybe signs are just coincidences. Or maybe they're love notes from somewhere we can't see. I'll never be able to prove it either way, but I do know this: I'm grateful for them, for the comfort they bring, for the hope they stir up, for the gentle reminder that maybe, just maybe, we're never really alone. And now, I'm curious about you. Have you ever had a sign that felt too real to ignore? Something that stopped you in your tracks and made you wonder if it was more than chance? Share it in the comments below. I would love to hear your story. You never know, your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.